Welcome to the Weekly Homicide Report, the weekly program where we talk about all the people that needlessly died at the hands of another person. So let's take a look at this week's graph. Chicago had 20 homicides. Yes, you heard that right, 20 murders and a mass shooting. This is the third time in 2.5 months that they've had 20 or more murders. Philadelphia keeps trying, but they just can't keep up with Chicago. They had 10 murders and have 10 more murders this year than they did at this time last year. Baltimore had 3 homicides, one of the best weeks they've had in this city almost all year. The numbers for Milwaukee seemed a little messed up this week on the city's website, so we'll wait for an update on that next week. Washington, D.C. had 4 murders, and I'm adding Minneapolis this week. They're much lower than these other cities and had only 1 murder this past week. But this city is a ticking time bomb and needs to be covered. They have an election coming up in November that could potentially change this city if they vote correctly. Depending on how the vote goes, this city's either going to get dramatically better or substantially worse. Those are its 2 choices. And since they continue to vote for the substantially worse, that is likely what they're going to get. So there were 21 mass shootings last week. I covered one of them independently, but I'm going to try to start doing weekly podcasts that talk a little bit about all of these each week. This week it'll post on Friday, but going forward I'll try to have it posted on Thursday, so it's up prior to this weekly report. There were 19 mass shootings over Labor Day weekend alone, the second highest total for a Labor Day weekend in the recent history. I'm not sure how many mass shootings they had back in the 90s, though I'm pretty sure we have more now. So we'll assume that the 23 that followed the summer of Floyd was the most over any Labor Day weekend in history, and that the 19 we had this past Labor Day was the second highest. And if you're interested in hearing about all of those, check the video will be out later today. Check that out, and we'll talk a little bit about every one of the mass shootings that nobody even knew happened if you didn't live in these cities. So 4 children under the age of 11 and 22 between the ages of 12 and 17 were shot and killed. Both of those numbers are slightly better than what the weekly averages are. The younger kids' average is just over 6 per week, and the teenagers usually are closer to 25 a week. There were 29 reported defensive use of a firearm incidents. I didn't cover any of these on their own, but did post a video about defensive use and how that may be the only thing that gives us some relief from all this violence. And I did a couple of videos on out-on-bond murderers, which is something I'm going to try to do every week, because out of the 400 to 500 murders every week that we have, those are the ones that are the most preventable. On to the murder-suicides. Now, these are just the ones done with a gun. So far in week 36, we are at 476 for the year, and that's an increase of 8 from this time last week, which is of the lowest weekly totals this year. Well, that's all I have for you today, but I'll be back next week with the week 37 numbers. Until then, have a great week, and I'll catch you next week. Support this channel and pick yourself up some original crime-related apparel. Look for the link in the description.